Thank you so much for everybody that just joined us. We're going to get started here in just a quick minute. Well, Bill, do you want to go ahead and start us off?
Sure. Thanks, Julie. Well, welcome everybody. Hopefully we'll have a few more people joining us, but welcome to, I believe this is our third public meeting for the Reimagine System Optimization Plan, but the first of two public meetings this week. So we want to encourage you to participate. We have a short presentation, and then after that, we are going to be opening up for Q&A for any comments that you all have. So please feel free to chime in and give us your thoughts. Thanks.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Bill. My name is Julie Skeen. I'm part of the Reimagine team. We also have Bill Soroy, Doug Monroe, Christina Zajueta, and Brandon, I'm going to screw up your name. Say it again. Sorry about that.
Oh, no, you're good. It's Brandon Figliolino.
Thank you very much. He's new to our team, joining us. So we are here prepared to answer any questions you may have. We're excited about this project. So if you want to go to the next slide, I'll jump in. It's a very brief presentation because we really want this to be about answering questions and in providing information to you guys. So I'll start off with just a little overview. We are working on a project that we've been calling Reimagine RTD, and it has two major components. What we're going to be talking about tonight is the system optimization plan. So that is our short-term focus to redesign the transit service, really to balance, the travel needs of the region with the budget limitations and workforce limitations that RTD is facing today. So that's the most what we're going to talk about today. But we also have a second piece, the mobility plan for the future, which is the longer term planning for RTD, looking at longer term strategies out to 2050 to address the region's future travel needs. So more to come on that. Today, we're focusing mostly on a route by route reassessment over RTD's overall transit system. Next slide, please. So the foundation for the system optimization plan was really built on these guiding principles. And these guiding principles were formally approved by the RTD Board of Directors last year. And they really set the goal for what we're trying to achieve. We want safe and reliable service. So mobility is a goal. We want to make sure we're removing barriers to accessing transportation and providing the service to those who need it most, which is equity. Acting as good stewards of taxpayer dollars, living within our means, financial, partnerships, identifying opportunities. Who can we work with to improve our service and to do and to seek opportunities, maybe even to increase service. Workforce, recognizing RTD team members are our greatest asset, and it is one of our biggest challenges right now. We'll talk about that a little bit more. As RTD, as other transit agencies, as other companies, frankly, around the country are struggling with identifying enough workers to operate and maintain our vehicles in the system. And then finally, sustainability. The more people we can get out of single occupancy vehicle cars and onto the transit service, the better it is for the environment. So these are the sort of foundational premise that we're working under as we developed the system optimization plan. Next slide, please. So what is it? What is a system optimization plan? Or we lovingly like to call it the SOP. So it is, as I mentioned, it's taking a step back and looking at RTD's entire network as a whole, and then going route by route by route and going and taking a look at these routes and making changes as needed to increase ridership, because that's very, very important for the system, improve service performance and that efficiency, that reliability, as well as I mentioned before, really making sure that we have set up this system in a way that it meets RTD's budget constraints and workforce constraints, and it provides the most effective and efficient system within those constraints. So that's the system optimization plan. It is a route by route guide for how RTD should be laying out their services between now and 2027. Next slide, please. So our challenge, one of the biggest challenges with RTD is that we have the largest, or one of, if not the largest, service area than any other transit agency across the country, over 2,000 square miles across 8 different counties. And so that puts a challenge out there for us, because we have to balance the needs of more of the core areas in the city where there's more dense populations and more people that are using transit on a day-to-day basis. But then we also have service out in the suburbs where there's opportunities where, these suburbs are paying into the RTD system as well. They're paying for service, but they don't have as many people. But we need the whole system to work as a whole. So we have to balance the needs of the people in the core area with a lot of dense population with the sparser populated areas out in the suburbs, but they're also paying into the system as well. So what the SOP tries to do is to balance those needs across and make the system work across the entire district. Next slide, please. So what are we trying to do with the SOP? It's about simplifying our routes, making sure that they're well-defined corridor routes, the buses and trains stay on the corridors as much as possible and don't diverge. Consistency, making sure that there's logical connections within the system and there's fewer regular trip patterns, consistent span of service. The service starts and ends around the same time. And then reliability, which honestly, we've heard quite a bit about as we've been doing outreach over the last couple of months on this. That feedback that I need to make sure that the system is reliable for me to be able to depend on it to get to my job, to get to my office, to get to the grocery store, whatever I'm trying to do. So really all the changes we're making, we're trying to make it simpler, more consistent, and more reliable. Next slide, please. So one thing we tried to do is take a step back when we look at all our routes and then organize them into 4 categories. And these categories are really based on the travel market. So who are these different routes serving? So for example, the core, so that's sort of that regionally focused backbone. So that's where the major trunk lines of the system are that everything feeds into. So those are the core lines. And I'll bring up the map in just a second. The connect lines they're the local bus and rail routes that connect. So there's the routes that feed into this backbone. Then there's the commute routes, which are regional bus routes they're more limited stops. Think about the commute routes as being destinations. They serve downtown Denver, or they serve the airport, or they serve Anschutz. So like big population centers and areas like that, you'll have direct commuter routes into those. And then finally, the commuter routes. The commuter routes are those local routes that are really designed to meet each of it's unique depending on what the community needs. So I'll show you a quick map. So if you want to bring up the first one, thank you. So the red lines, those are the rail lines. And those community, that yellow line, those are those local routes that we talked about that really meet those individual needs. If you go one more, you start seeing the commute routes. So you'll see that these are all across, driving out to the airport, coming into downtown, those types of things. And then the connect routes, that are all the local bus routes that connect to kind of the major system. And then finally, you'll see the core, which are those blue routes right in the middle. So the idea behind organizing the service this way is making sure that, when we think about how well a service is doing, part of what we need to ask is, well, what are we trying to accomplish with that service? And that's why by organizing these into 4 service categories, we have a better sense of what we're trying to accomplish with the service. And then it's easier to compare routes and specific bus and route and train rail lines. Next slide, please. So how will the SOP improve RTD services? We spend a lot of time going route by route by route, really trying to figure out the best way to lay out the overall network. And one of the main things that the SOP accomplishes, now this is all compared to September of 2021. So compared to last year, there's a 57% increase in district-wide access to 15 minutes or better service. So what does that mean? It means we recognize that more frequent service is easier for people to use, will encourage more ridership. And so by looking at the SOP and organizing it the way we have, we're seeing a pretty significant increase in the amount of population in the district that can access that super frequent service. We also focus quite a lot on social equity communities, those communities, lower income, people of color, people that really, really rely on the transit system for every day. Maybe they don't have more than one car, they really use the transit system to get to their office. So for those types of populations, there you see another significant increase in the total amount of these equity communities that have access to that frequent service, that 15-minute service or greater. And something that we've heard quite a bit in our feedback as we've been out and talked to these different communities is traditionally RTD has provided that really, high level service in the morning, people going into work, and then high level service in the evening, people coming back, but not as much service in the middle of the day. And part of what we heard from these community members was that we need more service in the midday. We need to be able to not just go into the office and back, but what if we need to get out at lunch? Or what if our jobs aren't 9 to 5? What if we have different hours? And so what you'll see with this SOP is that it provides that increase in that mid-service day to allow more flexibility and more use. And as I mentioned before, trying to balance the needs of the really dense areas and the needs of the broader suburban areas that all need to be connected. So it's really trying to balance those. Next slide, please. So public outreach, this is your opportunity. If you go to the next slide, we started outreach on this back, in January. And one of our main tools, and you will see the email here, and we're also going to put it in the chat. Brenda might have already done that. Oh, thank you. So this is an online tool where you can come in and you can click on your route. It's a GIS, so it's a map-based tool. You can zoom in, you can highlight your route, and you can put specific comments in there. I think there should be a bus stop here, or this route should get extended here, or it should run along this route. What you'll also see when you look at the tool is it's covered right now because we've got a lot of comments. It's covered right now with little yellow dots. Each of those little yellow dots is a comment that someone else has made. And so you can click on your route and you can also see what other comments other individuals are making. So as of right now, we have over 1,000 comments. So we're very, very excited. We're going to be taking your comments in real time tonight, but also wanted to let you know, you can go to this website, or if you look in the chat, you can also email us directly at communityengagement@rtd-denver.com. Or you can leave us a voicemail and we'll call you back at 303-489-7792. So that information is in the chat as well. So lots of different ways to reach out to us. You can comment today. We're going to get into that next. Or you can send us an email, or you can get onto our online tool, and or you can call us. And we would love any of those options because we just love to hear from you. So our public comment period is open until March 9th. And as I mentioned, here's our different options for getting information directly to us. So as of right now, we have over 1,000 comments, and we're hoping for some more because this is so important, and we really want to make sure that we are hearing from you. So with that, I'm going to stop, and I'm hoping we can get some questions. We have RTD folks here that can talk about specific routes, or we can talk about the overall process, or any questions and thoughts you have. We would love to hear it, and we are capturing. This meeting is being recorded. We're capturing all these comments. The other thing I should mention is all of the comments we receive, we are going to put them into one big old document. And so each of the comments is going to have an individual response. And we're going to be posting that on our website in the next month or so, whenever we get final approval from our RTD board. And so as you have your questions, we're going to be providing you answers, but we also can do it in real time as of right now. So we'd love the opportunity. So feel free if you'd like to put a question in chat, or if you want to raise your hand, or if you want to unmute and ask your question. We're keeping it pretty informal. We just love to hear from you. So what sort of questions do you have? Any questions or thoughts? We can go back to any part of the presentation. Go ahead. Yes, please.
Yes, my name is Chris Humphrey. And I don't know, does this include the accessorized?
So that's a great question. So that is a component of this. If you look at our maps and the SOP, everything that is currently accessoride and FlexRide is included in that. And there are opportunities once the SOP is finalized and all the routes are determined, then we will be going back and taking a look to see if there's opportunities. We call it mobility on demand, opportunities to provide additional FlexRide and accessoride services throughout the network. So if it includes accessoride, if you have an existing accessoride route, it is included in the SOP as of right now.
It's not a route. A couple of us that ride the accessoride, especially from the VA home, we have a certain time that we're supposed to be picked up, but sometimes we don't get picked up for 2 or 3 hours. And they keep telling us, well, we've called this, their drivers tell us that they called. What if you all ever thought of having a volunteer program at RTD? You all do not have any kind of volunteer program or something where we can help you all out with some of these problems that you all have especially
Mhm.
like taking a phone call from the dispatcher that the driver is running 2 hours late, and we could call that customer back and, and let them know that you all are running late.
Mhm. Oh, I appreciate that. I appreciate that feedback. Bill, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say that, I think we'll take your comment and we'll get that to our Accessoride people. Larry Buter, who's kind of the head of our Accessoride program, I'm certainly will want to hear your comments, and we'll get those to him and see if he wants to maybe reach out to you separately, because I understand your concern and the issues that you have, and we'll try to get those addressed.
Well, I tried calling my board director, district person. I'm in District D, but
Okay.
I don't know if she's male or female, but she never has returned my phone calls.
Okay.
Well,
And
go ahead.
I was going to say, and I don't know if you, and I think you said your name was Clarissa. Could you repeat your name?
Chris Humphreys.
Chris Humphreys. Okay.
Yes, my Accessoride number is 98144.
Oh, okay, 98144. Okay. All right. And this, because I'm not the expert on Accessoride, so that information the Accessoride people would know, your address or how to contact you from that number.
But it's not. I mean, it's not just only for Accessoride. I mean, I think that would be useful in RTD service all over, not just Accessoride.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The concept of the volunteers to help us out with things. So I appreciate that feedback. We'll definitely take that down. Terrific. Thank you. Other questions, other feedback, other ideas? Feel free to put your comments in the chat or unmute yourself. If you have any questions, any thoughts. Well, while you guys are thinking, I do have one more slide I'll go back to, and then we can open up for questions again. So just wanted to kind of tell you what our next steps are. So once we get your comments, I'm hoping for a little bit more tonight to hear from you. We're going to take those comments. We are looking to modify the draft SOP that is online right now based on the feedback that we get from everyone. And then we will be taking it to the RTD Board of Directors for a formal approval. As we mentioned, we are going to try to incorporate as many comments as possible, but the vast amount of the comments we are getting are for increasing service, which we appreciate that. We think that's great that people want more of the service, and we're definitely going to take a look at that. And then the other thing I wanted to mention that given our workforce constraints and our financial constraints right now, the SOP is going to be implemented over time between now and 2027 through RTD's normal service change process. And what's great about that is that means that 3 times a year, RTD will be looking at making some of these changes, implementing some of these pieces. And then, but there'll be a public outreach component for each step of the way. And so it's not your last opportunity to comment, but we definitely would love your feedback now. So looks like we have a comment from Patrick. I'd like to see RTD do what the Bay Area's BART system has done, build dense transit-oriented development on station-adjacent land like park and rides. Ridership on any system has a lot to do with who's proximate to access. In general, I support the SOP direction, increasing frequency of service versus greater geographic coverage. Thank you so much for your thoughts on that, Patrick. Love to get Bill's thought as our TOD manager on his question about how the BART system is set up.
Sure, and thanks, Patrick, for your comments. In regards to TOD and development of your stations, we do certainly want to encourage that. There's a couple of different ways that we do that. One is certainly work with the jurisdictions as they look at doing plans around our stations, and pretty much every jurisdiction has done some level of planning around our, particularly our rail stops and some of our major bus areas. The other thing that we do and that I'm excited about is that we do have an opportunity for developers to make proposals to us to do development on our property, and that is something that that we have been working on and have various proposals that are out there that are coming to us about putting development, put some pretty dense stuff around some of our stations. So we're excited. Hopefully in the next year or so that we'll hear more information about those, as they're kind of in process right now. But I do support, and we do support the higher density around our stations, and we know that that is a primary vehicle to get us more transit ridership. The other thing I'll note on that same area that we did early in 2021 is we adopted a new ETOD program, which is an equitable TOD program to encourage affordable housing. That's another variable too that we think helps with transit, because we've shown, and we've done our own studies that show that people who have lower income rely more on transit, and promoting affordable housing around transit is a way to increase ridership. It's a huge issue right now in the region, and we're trying to encourage people to look at that, doing that around our stops and stations and throughout the system.
Terrific. Thank you, Bill. Looks like Phil has a question about the C line. Would you like to unmute yourself, Phil, and ask your question?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, you sound great.
I was just wondering, I live off of the Evans station, and I was just wondering why the C line stopped running, even though the out of service trains are running the C route.
Doug, is that one you could possibly help us out with?
Yeah. So those out of service trains are just going from the RTD light rail maintenance facility there to get to the W line. So they'll so I guess, yeah, I recognize, they probably could run in service, but there's only a handful of them per day, and they're kind of at weird times. So I think for, simplicity's sake, we're not operating those trains as in-service trains. They're just operating to get to and from the W line.
Is there any chance that the C line will come back?
The C line is not included in the system optimization plan. Both the C and the F line are not part of the system optimization plan. Reason being, I guess, in the busiest part of our light rail system, in between I-25 and Broadway Station and 10th and Osage Station, where we previously had 5 lines going through there, we were really at our absolute capacity. The rail system was built almost 30 years ago now, that section of it. And the equipment is kind of getting old, and we were trying to run 20 trains an hour through there, and it really was impacting the reliability of the whole system. So by simplifying the lines that we offer and discontinuing the C and F lines with the intention of eventually increasing the D, E, and H lines to run more frequently, that will maintain the same capacity through there with fewer trains but longer trains, at the same time improve the entire reliability of the light rail system, which we've seen while we've been operating this pattern through the pandemic as well, just to provide that reliability on the rail system there.
That makes sense. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Phil, for your question. And we will capture your feedback on the C line as well. Looks like I've got a comment in the chat from Dave. Is it possible to see the locations of buses in an app? It looks like this can be done for trains. Dave, are you talking about real time, like as the buses are moving around so you can see where they are? Is that
Yes.
what you're looking at?
Yes.
So Doug or Bill, do you have any thoughts on that? I don't think we have an app that does that yet.
Our Next Ride app will tell you that, and it's generally done if you punch in the stop that you're waiting at. It'll tell you the real-time location, or the expected arrival time, which is the real-time bus information for the buses that are serving that stop. And it'll also, I admit I haven't used it recently to track an individual bus, but it previously tell you what bus, like what the bus number of the bus that was coming next was, and you could click on that bus and follow that bus individually. You can't see like all the buses at once, but you can kind of do it on a stop by stop or line by line basis.
Oh, great. Thank you very much.
And that service is called Next Ride.
And Doug, where can they find that? Is that something you download off the App Store?
No, it's not even an app. It's just it's part of the rtd-denver.com website.
Okay.
And for it there.
And I'll add to that, there are some external apps, and the one that I use that I know that a lot of people use is called Transit app. It's if you go onto the App Store and you hit Transit app, it will come up. It's kind of like a green symbol with a little squiggly line through it. That does show real-time bus information as well. So that's another option for you just to check out.
Great, thank you.
Terrific. Thank you. So Transit, we also updated that in the chat. Thank you, Brandon. Other questions, other thoughts? This is your opportunity. We've got RTD here. Phil, go ahead.
Hi,
Phil?
thanks. I just had one more question.
Of course.
Well, like when the sea line was eliminated, I kind of had to transfer, from the D to the E to the W and stuff. And it usually works out. But there were times where, like the W line eastbound would be coming into Auraria West, and the E line southbound will just like pull away right away. And like I know that the E line will be waiting for the D at Broadway. And I was just wondering about like the logistics of that, or if maybe it could be tighter. And I know like you have to take into account like people holding the door open and stuff, and like maybe handicapped passengers will account for like the missed window. But I was just wondering, like, do the drivers have any discretion to like maybe wait like a couple more seconds so people that might be transferring can, I don't know if it's too much to ask or if I'm asking too much, but yeah.
So that's something, so that connection at Auraria West is one of the tighter spots in our system to schedule. And it has to do with the W line. The W line has a single track section on the western end of it, where we have to have W lines trains pass out there west of Federal Center Station. So that it limits our ability to make that connection better, basically. And try to give a minute or something, or a few minutes instead of like 1 minute to make that connection. And like you've experienced, when they miss, it tends to be very close. And you're on a train watching your connecting train go away. So they do have a little bit of discretion, but if it depends on when they put in their call for the signal to depart from that station. And once they get that, they have to leave because it has repercussions for the whole light rail network if they don't. So I think some drivers or some train operators, if they see that W line or that E line sitting there, and they know that they have a few seconds to spare, they won't put that call in right away. But otherwise, they're kind of limited and they have to take off right away. But it is something that we can reiterate that to our rail ops folks to try to make that as good as we can.
Nice, thank you.
Well, thank you, Phil. This is it's really helpful information for sharing us, and we'll absolutely share with our operators as well.
Thank
This
you.
is Ms. Humphries. I have done that on a couple times, but if you get on and let the driver know, the driver on the train that he's getting on, to let the next driver train extra courtesy hold. And sometimes if they get in on that in enough time, they will do that for that person if they have the time.
So you've been your experiences. Sometimes they'll have that flexibility to hold for you.
Yeah, like a courtesy, they call it a courtesy hold. They have
Got
like a
it.
minute, and if he lets the driver to call the other driver, and sometimes they're able to do that.
Excellent.
And that is especially for us older and elderly people, they will do that.
Yeah. And it's a lot easier to accomplish on bus than it is on rail too, for those waits.
Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. Wanted to let you know too, there's in the chat, there is a link for the list of apps. If you're interested in looking at the transit app and trying to get that real-time bus information, there's a link in the chat for you if you'd like more information about that. What other questions do we have? Questions, thoughts, feedback? I don't know if anybody's had an opportunity to look at the system optimization plan online. Be interested in your feedback on the tool. Any thoughts that you might have, or any specific questions about your route and what's happening with your route? We'd love to hear it.
Hey, Julie, we just got a comment from Lars in the chat.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brandon. So from Lars, do you think it's possible to eventually incorporate passes and MyRide cards into digital wallets and make pass readers compatible with contactless credit debit cards? Bill, I'm thinking that's probably a question for you, maybe?
Yes. Thanks, Lars. Actually, we are going to be transitioning this year to what's called an account-based ticketing system, which is, again, we're going to be getting rid of MyRide cards. The challenge with MyRide cards, as everybody knows, is the card is the vehicle to get, you have to load money on and off the card, and it's kind of cumbersome. We're going to go to more of an account-based or online system starting later this year, and that will be phased in over a number of months. And then, your question about a digital wallet, I think that is certainly something we want to get to. I don't think it's going to be available on the initial implementation of the account-based ticketing, but I know, as an example, I'm talking to some people about going after grant dollars to do some of those things. So I hopefully in the near future that we can have that capability, because I know that is certainly where the transit industry is heading, and we need to kind of keep up with it as an agency.
Well, and while we have a minute, Bill, since we got you, do you want to talk to us a little bit about the new fare study that's coming out?
Oh, sure. So for those of you who haven't heard, we are starting a fare study, or have started a fare study, to take a comprehensive look at our fare structure. We are going to be looking at both the cost and kind of the complexity of the system. We've heard a lot of feedback over the last couple of years about prices being too high and our structure being too complex. So we are taking a comprehensive look at it. You can look in the near future for opportunities to get engaged, starting in the next couple months, that we're going to be having kind of engagement starting in the spring through the summer and the fall, to get opportunities to give feedback on our fares and direction for how we might change things. So just keep your eyes open for that. That'll be information will starting to come out probably next month and to March and April about that.
Terrific. Thank you, Bill. Other questions? Phil, I still see your hand raised, but I don't know if that was from before or if you had a new question.
Oh, no, that must be from before.
Oh, that's fine. I do that all the time. I always leave my hand up there. Other thoughts, other questions? Just a reminder, actually, if you want to go, Sebastian, to the slide that reminds everyone of different ways to get in touch with us. So you can feel free, if you want to go online and actually put your comments directly in the tool, that would be great. Otherwise, feel free to email us directly or call us. If you or any individuals need additional translation services or would like an individual meeting, we'd be happy to do that as well. Looks like we have a question from Riley.
There you go. Hello.
Hi.
I actually had basically two questions. One was about when I understand that RTD, as part of Reimagine, RTD is going to also involve long range planning that's beyond 2027. I was wondering when.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I was mostly wondering when that part of the Reimagine process would have public meetings and all that. And I was also, and I also actually did review the system optimization plan, and there's a lot of downtown centric service for the connect routes, and I feel like that's kind of unnecessary when you could readjust some of those routes to other urban parts of the city, and you would actually have greater coverage with the same frequency. So I was wondering why that was still in effect, and also a transfer to a core route that's every 15 minutes is a lot better than a transfer between two 30-minute routes. So I just think that being able to transfer onto the core routes would allow for much more efficiency.
Well, thank you very much for sharing those comments. I'll address the first, please, the first question, and then I think I'll probably hand it over to Doug for your second. So as we mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, there are two components to Reimagine RTD, the short-term component, which is we're talking about now, and then that longer-term component you're asking about, which is the long-term plan. We're calling it the mobility plan for the future. So that's between now and 2050. So what's great about that is we have been working in concert. So we have actually been doing a bunch of information gathering and technical assessments for the mobility plan for the future. We're looking at electrification. We're looking at parking strategies. We're looking at what it would mean for RTD if they were there, more to integrate services with our partners and things along those lines. So your question is spot on. The next couple of months, you're going to start seeing some public meetings about that. So we had to do a bunch of our technical work up front so that we could sort of frame things with the mobility plan for the future, but we will be going out to the public in the next couple of months. So stay tuned. Love your feedback on that. In terms of your second question, Doug, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. So the question was, why do we still have so many routes connecting in sort of the core? And can we shift some of those routes, to some of the other areas? I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, downtown is still, I think, the busiest destination of the RTD system. Even though so much of office work and commuters and typical 9-to-5 folks, we've lost a large percentage of that through the pandemic. It's still the central part of the system as far as connecting from one place to the other. I mean, Union Station is the hub of our rail network and our Flatiron Flyer BRT network there. And so just that's the destination that people want to get to, or they need to go through there to get to their connection. Our rail network really isn't set up in the way of someplace like Chicago or something like that, where there's great transfer opportunities at every cross street to get into downtown. So we still rely on those buses that they're kind of serving areas that are outside of downtown, and they if they continued in a straight line, they probably would go around downtown, but you have this whole group of people on those buses that need to get to that one specific to those specific locations that are downtown. So in the effort of keeping those transfers and providing service to those destinations, downtown really remains kind of the hub of the system, and something that we need to serve with a lot of service.
Did that address your comments, Riley, or your question?
That indeed did, though I do feel like the RTD could, in its mobility plan for the future, try and make its transfers between the core downtown, the more core rail routes, and also some of the core bus services with the other bus services of RTD, though.
Well,
I do understand that downtown is still a very big transfer hub. That makes sense.
No, but we appreciate that feedback, and we'll definitely capture that as well as we move forward. And like I said, keep your eyes out. We'll be doing public meetings for the mobility plan for the future over the next few months. Great, thank you. Great feedback tonight. Other questions, other thoughts? Thank you, Sebastian. Again, we have our slide up here telling you how to reach us. If you have any thoughts after this meeting, our public comment period is up until March 9th. And if you are interested, feel free to go to the tool and you can read everybody else's comments too, especially if you have you're sharing a similar route. Well, give us just one more minute. It sounds like we might be winding down. Really appreciate everybody participating tonight. So
Julie, can I
last,
ask one-
please
can I
go
ask
ahead.
I live out here on the 76, and we do not have any transportation that can get us from Southwest to the downtown, but one bus and that's the 35. And we waiting on that 76 and it never shows up. What can we do? We've been complaining about that route for years. I've been out here over 20 years and we've been complaining about that 76. And that's the only bus we have is the 76, which all these other buses have 2 and 3 different buses on that line, but we don't, for north and south. And out here, there's nowhere for us to get any bus schedules, nowhere to get any transfers, anything to deal with RTD. Out here, we're just isolated.
Well, thank you for sharing that concern. Doug, do you have any thoughts on the 76? Is that a
Yeah. So yeah, Route 76 currently is one of the longest routes in the system, running from Southwest Plaza all the way up to US 36 in Broomfield. So the system optimization plan actually is looking at addressing that for reliability purposes. So the proposal for Route 76 is to actually split it into 2 routes. One route that would run from US 36 in Broomfield down to Lakewood Commons, and then another route that would run from Southwest Plaza to Old Town Arvada. So they would overlap in the middle in between Lakewood Commons and Old Town Arvada. But our hope is that with having that route be shorter, with having 2 basically shorter routes, there's less opportunities for delay along that route. So it would hopefully improve the reliability of Route 76 and allow you to make those connections on the other routes for you to get where you need to go.
So thank you for sharing those concerns. Absolutely. And we will be monitoring that moving forward, but it looks like we are addressing, we talked about part of the SOP is really trying to improve the reliability. And the number one thing we found for reliability were these super long routes. The longer the route goes, the easier it is to get off schedule, essentially. And so what we're proposing for 76 is to split it up a little bit, and hopefully that's going to help your reliability issues. So thank you for raising that.
And please give us some, we do not have any seats. We're standing out there in the cold and we do not have any bus stops to sit and wait for the buses.
I'm sorry, I had a hard time hearing that. Are you talking about bus like facilities, like shelters or?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Oh, so needing, do you have a particular location you're looking for that?
Just look up and down 76 and you see
76, okay. Absolutely. Bill, I don't know if you have any thoughts on the.
Yeah, just one thing on the shelter issue. Unfortunately, RTD doesn't control most of the shelters that are in place. We have over 10,000 bus stops. And I think I don't know, Doug, what's the number of shelters we have, but I mean,
About 300 that are owned by RTD.
Yeah, so of those 10,000, we have 300 shelters that we actually own. Now there's, hundreds of shelters beyond that, and probably in the thousands that are controlled by somebody else, either by a city, or in some cases they actually have an advertising company that actually puts those in. But unfortunately, we as an agency don't have a lot of those. We just don't have the capacity and the financial wherewithal to kind of put those in. Typically there's a very high standard for putting those in. I can't remember the number of boardings per day, but it's pretty high for us. So unfortunately, we don't have a lot of ability to put in new ones, especially given our current kind of financial situation. But certainly we can make that known to our service planning group, who do regular changes, and as they talk with local jurisdictions, and others along that about potentials for shelters, we'll make sure that they bring that up.
Is that the reason that we've been waiting for 2 years for them to finish fixing the elevator at the Inglewood station?
You know, there's a lot of it, there's some issues there. Just as I know there's some specialty equipment because, and I know this from a long history with that station, that obelisk, that's, you know, the great, you know, kind of marker for that station that Inglewood put in when we built it, actually does not fit the the elevator very well, and they're having to do some changes out. My understanding, they've been having some challenges meeting some of the requirements associated with those elevators based on some of those kind of uniqueness to that whole situation. So, you know, I don't know, Doug, if you know anything more about it, but I just know that there's some unique issues
We only have one elevator.
right. And that was built before we kind of had a standard to put in 2 elevators. So that is a challenge because, you know, many of our stops, specifically like T-Rex, kind of from the T-Rex project and along I-25 and till now, we've typically wanted to put in 2 elevators for the exact same reason that you're talking about, which they break down so frequently that it's nice to have a 2, so we have a redundant elevator, but we didn't have that back in the day. When we built the Southwest corridor.
But we will also pass along that feedback as well, because I know that they're continuing looking at that for sure. Well, we've got a couple of minutes left. Any kind of final thoughts, questions? Really appreciate everybody's feedback tonight. These have been great questions. Well, with that, I think we will wind down our meeting tonight. Thank you so much for everyone that participated. Thank you for your feedback. Thank you for your comments. Again, please reach out to us. Either go online to the tool, email us, or call us directly. We'd be more than happy to set up any individual meetings with you. We'd be happy to provide translation services, whatever you need. Feel free to reach out to us because we really, really want your feedback. So with that, have a wonderful evening and thank you so much for participating. Have a great night, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.